Hello and welcome to the Gaggle War Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, in the early hours of Thursday morning in Washington, D.C., two young employees of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., were shot dead. The perpetrator has been apprehended, and his motivations were clearly not a mystery, since upon his arrest, he cried, "Free, free Palestine." And now obviously he's in detention and is facing, first-degree murder, and, he will duly be convicted, since he's already confessed to the murder, convicted, and doubtless he'll be facing the death penalty. But what I think was very interesting is how the Israel lobby exploited this and turned it into something that it really wasn't.
Shamelessly
It was
exploited it.
shamelessly. This is a person who was clearly politically motivated. He was politically motivated, and it was an act against Israel. Now, obviously, no one wants to justify killings, the streets of Washington, D.C., and just killing essentially two young employees of the Israeli embassy. But clearly, the political motivations are apparent. However, the Israel lobby, and starting from Benjamin Netanyahu, wanted to make this about something else. And here I just want to show you a little bit of what Netanyahu, the statement that he made. So let's take a look. And I know it's never easy to listen to Netanyahu, but
I know.
so here it is.
Well, that tragically did not happen. Yaron and Sarah weren't the victims of a random crime. The terrorist who cruelly gunned them down did so for one reason and one reason alone. He wanted to kill Jews. And as he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th. On that day, thousands of terrorists stormed into Israel from Gaza. They beheaded men, they raped women, they burned babies alive, they butchered 1,200 innocent people and took 251 innocent people hostage to the dungeons of Gaza. A short time afterwards, Chancellor Scholz of Germany visited Israel. And after he saw the horrors, he said to me, "These Hamas terrorists are exactly like the Nazis." He was right. And if they could get away with it, these Hamas terrorists would have slaughtered every last Jew on earth. For these neo-Nazis, Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want to destroy the Jewish state.
Okay, do we need to hear any more, George?
I want, but just a little bit more. I want to hear it because he then launches into this attack on the various government leaders.
Oh, okay.
Britain, Canada, and others. They're now proposing to establish a Palestinian state and reward these murderers with the ultimate prize. Well, for 18 years, we had a de facto Palestinian state. It's called Gaza. And what did we get? Peace? No. We got the most savage slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. You won't be surprised to learn that Hamas thanked President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer and Carney for demanding that Israel end its war in Gaza immediately. Hamas was right to thank, because by issuing their demand, replete with a threat of sanctions against Israel, not Hamas, these three leaders effectively said they want Hamas to remain in power. They want Israel to stand down and accept that Hamas is.
So that's
George, that one sentence. Oh my God. Okay. I mean, it's a master class in lies and deception. Okay.
Right.
That one sentence.
Right, sir. Now, what one can obviously conclude from this is, that the way the Israel lobby presents this, that Israel is somehow, peacefully minding its own business, and just doing its thing, and anybody at all who expresses criticism of Israel, and we're not talking about here the killer, but anyone at all who expresses criticism is, of course, driven by anti-Semitism. So that's basically, they want to kill every single Jew there is. Now, this person, just in Washington, D.C., name is Rodriguez, didn't just target random Jews. He very specifically targeted representatives of the Israeli government. And what did he say? He said, "Free Palestine." That was his motivation. He didn't say, "Well, I have to go kill Jews." But what has happened is that this confounding of two different things, known as Jews and Israel, is become increasingly simply accepted. It's just accepted, and therefore, when you criticize, say harsh things about Israel, you are somehow engaging in anti-Semitism. And it's just by dint of repetition, you've actually forced this people to accept this nonsense.
And it's a strategy of exhaustion. They're exhausting us by this. George, just before I don't want to forget this Rodriguez character. He's on camera. He was apprehended from what I understand, at least intuitively, he's admitted that he was the perpetrator.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he did.
Okay. And so he is in custody. He's facing the legal system. With a confession like that, with the forensic evidence that the authorities have, I think it's pretty clear that he will be convicted. Okay. And he will face justice, potentially the death penalty. Juxtapose that to all the forensic evidence we have of the IDF perpetrating crimes against civilians in Gaza. Overwhelming, something that we've never seen ever of this level of scrutiny. But they're not facing justice.
No.
Okay? And I'll say it perfunctorily because the targeting of these people is for political reasons. I read the manifesto. I'm not going to go into detail, but I can just say that there was nothing about being anti-Semitic, being fundamentally opposed to what the Israeli state is doing. Yes, absolutely. That's what the manifesto was all about. As a matter of fact, it was quite articulate. All right. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, George. Because of the time difference and everything, I heard about it the first few minutes it was reported, and I just thought, here we go again. Two young people have lost their lives, and now they're going to be used as a political prop.
Political prop.
And it's no coincidence, everyone. Everyone knows that Israeli Hasbara has been suffering badly over the last 18 months. And so Netanyahu was definitely on cue.
Well, it is, and why it's come just at the right moment is that there is sudden, almost unleashing of very harsh criticisms of Israel coming from the various European leaders. And there was the statement issued earlier in the week by Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, Macron, and Keir Starmer, that criticized Israel, not as much as it should have, but nonetheless it was quite severe, and on one particular issue, which is you aren't letting in humanitarian assistance into Gaza. And this is really quite startling, because really no one's asking Israel to provide food. No one's asking Israel to provide fresh water. No one's asking Israel to provide medicine, hygienic products. All they're asking Israel to do is let this in to Gaza. And Israel isn't doing it. So, so this has just come right at the very moment. And that's why when you saw what Netanyahu did there is he brought up this, Keir Starmer, Macron, and Mark Carney, and suggested deceitfully that they were somehow supporting Hamas. They were on the side of Hamas. And then take a look now at what, and then Trump kind of issued his what you would expect him to issue, and also says there that based obviously on anti-Semitism. So it was, but the
It's
thing
not
is,
obvious.
of course not. But the point is that and we've talked about this. We've done a number of podcasts on this, which is that it was under Trump, but it has been accepted since the first Trump term that these International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, their definition of anti-Semitism, has been adopted by the U.S. government. In other words, that when you criticize Israel, you are being anti-Semitic. And that is the stance of the U.S. government, based obviously on anti-Semitism, when clearly he was targeting representatives of the Israeli government. But now along came this guy Gideon Saar, who is Israel's foreign minister, and then he held a news conference. And this is what he says. This is the direct result of toxic anti-Semitic incitement against Israel and Jews around the world that has been going on since the October the 7th massacre. Direct result, says direct result of this anti-Semitic incitement. What incitement? I mean, no, there's, what leaders or anyone have actually incited any kind of violence against Jews, but even against representatives of the Israeli government. So once you bring this in, it's anti-Semitic, and then you keep repeating it, then everyone's immediately on the defensive. And then he goes on. Recently, we have witnessed an unprecedented wave of terror attacks and attempts against Israeli missions around the world, with an emphasis on Europe. And again, you would have to ask, well, what do you expect when you unleash so much terror against a largely civilian population? I mean, people are going to get upset all over the world, and someone is going to go off the edge and do something insane and psychotic himself. That's going to happen. So that's just inevitability.
Well,
So the
George,
idea that people are just going to be standing around and sort of and not be get very emotional about it, I mean, it's just the height of disingenuousness.
since the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants to make reference to the Holocaust and to Germans, I will take the liberty of doing the same thing. All right? He wants to use that as a historical reference. Well, so will I. I don't know about you, but I was thinking Kristallnacht. I was thinking Reichstag fire. Both were used to incite, and this double murder is being used in the same way, is to incite to determine political outcomes. And so this history of the Third Reich can cut both ways. I mean, if the Israelis want to mention that history, well, yes, then we all can mention that history. So it's a double-edged sword when it comes to that definition of what anti-Semitism is, which we did a couple of videos on.
Right, right. So it says here that Israeli missions and representatives around the world are targets of anti-Semitic terrorism that has crossed all red lines. So it says here Israeli missions and representatives are targets of anti-Semitic. No, they are. If they are indeed targets, they are targets of anti-Israeli acts. They're not targets of anti-Semitic. I mean, if you said, synagogues are being targeted, or random Jews attending classes are targeted, then you can say it's anti-Semitic. But that's not the case, and they know it's not the case. But they know that if you use that word, anti-Semitic, it has this very, very powerful, very toxic quality to it, and everybody gets on the defensive and says, no, 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 no. And that's why they do it. That's why it's by constant repetition, because everybody immediately backs away, because the last thing anybody would want to be accused of is anti-Semitism, because of course that means you're a Hitlerite. There is a direct line connecting anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement to this murder.
So say you, okay? Really?
So that what they're saying is that as the Israeli incitement, so he's declaring that there's a lot of people are responsible for this murder. He's saying that, oh yeah, they're responsible for this murder. This incitement is also done by leaders and officials of many countries and international organizations, especially from Europe. So there it is. Incitement, and this incitement is done by leaders and officials of many countries and international.
I didn't know Macron was being accused of being an anti-Semite.
As an anti-Semite.
I mean, considering how, when they have the European Parliament, which is a kind of a feckless, toothless organization, and George and I usually cover it in a satirical, irrelevant way. But you have even members of the European Parliament essentially begging their country's leaderships to intervene.
Right.
I mean, Europe is one of the enablers here. It's not anti-Semitic, it's
Right.
enabling.
Right. And then the words are the modern blood libels. They always bring out the blood libel. These libels about genocide, crimes against humanities, and murdering babies pave the way exactly for such murders.
Well, that's an interesting statement.
Yes.
Well, they're not libels. These are facts.
These are
Facts about genocide, crimes against humanity, and murdering babies have paved the way exactly for such murders. He's just got one
But
word.
you see, that's the point. He says, "Oh, this is a blood libel." When you say these things, you are inciting anti-Semitic murderous anti-Semitic hatred. So if you say these things, you are in effect a Hitlerite. And you heard the same thing from Netanyahu when he talked about, Chancellor Scholz, he said these Hamas, they remind me of Hitler. Yeah, that's right. They're Hitler. The global,
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it truly is extraordinary how Germany has abused its own history to help perpetrate another genocide. It is one of them. It is historically you can't reason with it. I mean, why the Germans are so motivated to help the Israelis? It's astounding that they have no self-reflection.
yeah, yes. The global atmosphere has endangered Israeli and Jewish blood. This is what happened.
They're not the same thing.
No. That's right. And of course, that's what's the interesting about is that in continually confounding the two, they are of course furthering anti-Semitism, because it's always the claim of the anti-Semite is that essentially all Jews are responsible for Israel.
Well,
every Jew in the world is responsible for Israel, and so when you say Israel and Jew, you're actually repeating the canards of the anti-Semite.
I don't know about you, George. You spend more time on Twitter X than I do, but this is emboldening real anti-Semites.
Yeah. This is what happens when leaders in the world surrender to the Palestinian terrorist propaganda.
No, this is the ambassador, right?
No, foreign minister. It's the
foreign minister. He doesn't have a problem with anti-Semitism. He has a problem with Western governments, and that's what this is.
I guess, yes. And
anti-Semitism is good for the Zionist cause.
Yes, it is. Yes. Hamas started the war on October the 7th, is solely responsible for this war's continuation, and is solely responsible for the suffering of Israelis and Palestinians alike. I say so. They always do this. It just started on October the 7th. So up until then it was peace.
That's right.
Peace in our time. Yeah.
And the Palestinians had their own state. It was called Gaza.
Which is what Netanyahu said. Yeah.
Exactly.
I say today to these leaders and officials, stop your incitement against Israel, stop your false accusations, strengthen Israel in its historic battle against the axis of evil in the Middle East. Um, so this was what they were talking about. This was this statement that was issued earlier this week by the United States, France, I mean, not the United States, United Kingdom, France, and Canada. Now, the statement itself is hardly earth-shattering, but it was sufficient to enrage the Israeli government. And it says here, we strongly oppose the extension of Israel's military operations in Gaza. The level of human suffering in Gaza is intolerable. Yesterday's announcement that Israel will allow a basic quantity of food into Gaza is wholly inadequate. We call on the Israeli government to stop its military operations in Gaza and immediately allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. This must include engaging with the UN and so on. And then it says the Israeli government's denial of essential humanitarian assistance to the civilian population is unacceptable and risks breaching international
Yeah.
humanitarian law. So,
That's the part I used in my recording yesterday. Is unacceptable and risks breaching international humanitarian law. We're way past that.
well,
And it's even
yeah,
at risk.
but I like it because, in other words, Israel isn't breaching international humanitarian law as of yet, but it's coming close to the line. It's just coming close to risking it. We condemn the abhorrent language used recently by members of the Israeli government, threatening that in their despair at the destruction of Gaza, civilians will start to relocate. Permanent forced displacement is a breach of international humanitarian law. Yeah, well, I mean, yes, I mean, you kind of woken up to that there is a plan there to force a mass departure by making life in Gaza intolerable. I mean, this has been obvious all along that this was the plan because otherwise it didn't really make very much sense in what Israel was doing other than to make life as intolerable as possible in order to force the population to pack up and leave.
And we all have to keep in mind is why are these three governments making reference to international humanitarian law? Well, a great deal of international humanitarian law is a result of what happened in Europe during the Second World War. Okay, this is part of never again. So, I mean, this is what's very important is that because of the atrocities committed against European Jewry, we have these laws. This is what makes it perverse.
Right. Yeah. Um, but of course, they're not. They don't really care very much about international humanitarian law. I mean, it's just something that they bring up
Yeah,
whenever
yeah,
pleases
but
them.
George, I mean that they're trying to hang their hat on this because this is conscience washing. They're trying to wash their conscience. You know, this is this event that happened in Washington D.C. This double murder is the reason why we're talking about it because the tide has been moving against Israel ever
Right.
slowly. I mean. I not that I think it's important, but I mean maybe it's a sign of the times. I mean that amazing intellectual of our time, Piers Morgan, he's been basically converted to this is just
Right.
he's like waking up. He's like I'm on the wrong side of this, and he's trying to save his skin. Okay, not that he cares about Palestinians. I don't think that's really in play right here. But more and more people are beginning to realize, oops, I got to get off this side. Okay, now this double murder here is only going to intensify because people that are against this, vehemently against this genocide, or they will only be empowered. They're going to it's basically the gauntlet has been thrown down. Who's the criminal here? Who's committing acts of crimes against civilians? It's only going to get more intensified. Israel's trying to fight back against Western governments. I don't know. They're the ones that are teetering right now. Will they retrench? Of course they will because they're afraid. But the longer this goes on, the more they're more why did these governments do it? Because they're under pressure, George. They didn't wake up and say, "Oh, this is, I think morally wrong." No. There's a lot of pressure now. People are saying, "You must put an end to this." So the pressure is only going to increase.
Right. Um, right. That's right. And the problem for Netanyahu is that he has no plan for bringing it to any conclusion anytime soon. That's why when he announced recently that he was going to send his forces back in and then drive the Palestinians down into the south, then he basically said, well, here we go again. I mean, this has been going on now for 19 months, and you don't seem to have accomplished anything very much. And now we're going to have another 19 months of this, and so that's why it's just caused this anguish, because there was at least a sense people were thinking, well, okay, in January that hey, maybe we're coming to some kind of a conclusion. We're going to bring it to a conclusion. And it turns out there's been no conclusion. And so it's just going to be the same thing, just again and again and again. And that's why I think these governments are really just that they are panicking. So what are we going to do
Yes,
now? Because
absolutely.
we got this
Because I said
another 19 months of this.
like I said, George, and all the way back to the beginning of this, after October 7th, we were talking about it. This is their opportunity to commit the crime that they've been working towards since the advent of the state of Israel, actually before. But and I remember you questioned me, well, they won't be able to pull it off, and I said, well, they're going to try, and they said they're going to keep trying. Okay,
Yeah.
and they, the Israeli government is, I mean, what they do is appalling, but. You have to give credit to the lobby in Europe and the lobby in the United States. I mean, they have these are very serious people,
Right.
very serious people. Okay, what you spend a couple $100 million and you can get billions and billions return in arms and all kinds of things, political favors, everything. I mean, this is a master class in how lobbying works. Okay, you can't say that they're ineffective because they're very, very effective.
Yep.
I mean, there's some nutcase congressman saying they should nuke Gaza. I've never heard of the guy before. Okay. Oh, he's the guy that took a Waltz seat. Yeah.
Yep. That's right. Yep. Yeah, I remember when he was elected, and there were a number of stories about that. Guy is a real Israel firster. I mean, he was the classic case of he's running as an America firster, but he has always been from first to last an Israel firster. And then he says that we will not stand by while the Netanyahu government pursues these egregious actions.
But you have been for 19 months.
Right, exactly. That's right. If Israel does not cease the renewed military offensive and lift its restrictions on humanitarian aid, we will take further concrete action.
Oh yeah, Netanyahu is real butthurt right now. Okay, really. Given the last 19 months, he's not sweating this.
I don't think so. But and now we have the classic, absolute classic. We oppose any attempt to expand settlements in the West Bank. Huh. Now, let's see. Now,
How
the
many
West Bank was
administrations do we go back on this
in
one?
1967, so that's now 58 years. 58 years. So therefore, the settlements began almost immediately, 58 years ago. It's been ongoing. It was ongoing after Oslo, when Oslo was supposed to be a pledge towards the two-state solution. It continued even as Israel was officially committed to the two-state solution. So that the settlements continued. Settlements are just ongoing and ongoing. And now they pretend, this is part of the whole international humanitarian law shtick, that, oh yeah, well, UN Security Council resolutions say that there should not be, this is occupied territory, and therefore there should not be any settlements. And now we stick by that. That's our position. They were against the settlements. It's been going on for 58 years. You haven't done anything for 58 years just during these settlements. And I mean, when you look, not only is this a violation of the Geneva Convention 4 about that this is occupied territory and you're not supposed to start building civilian settlements on occupied territory, but there are innumerable UN Security Council resolutions, all of which powers France, the UK, and the United States have all agreed to those Security Council resolutions saying that there should be no settlements. Israel must halt settlements which are illegal and undermine the viability of a Palestinian state and the security of both Israelis and Palestinians. We will not hesitate to take further actions, including targeted sanctions.
If this is so 1990s, don't you think?
It's so 1990s.
I mean, how many times? I mean, I've heard this so many times, I could have written this in my sleep.
And then we strongly support the efforts led by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt to secure an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. It's a ceasefire, the release of all remaining hostages, and a long-term political solution that offer the best hope of ending the agony of the hostages and their families, alleviating the suffering of civilians in Gaza, ending Hamas's control of Gaza, and achieving a pathway to a two-state solution. The two-state solution, as Bernie Sanders advocates, consistent with the goals of the 18th of June conference in New York, co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France. These negotiations need to succeed, and we must all work towards the implementation of a two-state solution, which is the only way to bring long-lasting peace and security to both Israelis, both Israelis and Palestinians deserve, and ensure the long-term stability in the region. So this was a statement that Netanyahu said is basically a Hamas statement. This was basically rewarding Hamas. And that Gideon Saar, the Israeli foreign minister, says was a direct incitement to murder against Jews. This feeble invocation, which is still, I guess, official policy and has been official policy for 58 years of the United States, United Kingdom, and France. But it was enough for this fulmination from the Israeli government. This statement is a call to anti-Semitism. It's a call for an incitement against all Jews.
Okay. Maybe my eye drops are kicking in, but I don't see that, George.
I don't see it either. But
I just don't see it.
That's why I played Netanyahu.
My only thought is, that's a pretty, it's a hefty paragraph, hefty. I think you could, in a half paragraph, you could easily justify cutting off all arms shipments to Israel. Full stop. I could do it in half that number of words and still would be legal. Right. All right. I find this, I find it humiliating. I find this is a perversion of so-called Western values, at least values that you and I would recognize, not, rules-based order junk and stuff like that. But this is a moral surrender. And it's going to go down in history as such. It will. Okay? This is so feckless, it's spineless. I mean, obviously they're writing this because there's a crisis, but their language doesn't reflect the crisis.
Right. But that's the thing. So, just going back to what we started from, which is this murders in Washington, D.C. And now they say, oh, this is because of this incitement of anti-Semitic hatred, rather than this is a response to something that has been going on for 19 months. And there are going to be people who are extreme, who are going to get very emotional, get very, very upset, and do terrible, crazy, psychotic things. That's inevitable. That is an inevitable response to what's been happening. But instead of addressing that and saying we need to just wrap this up as quickly as possible because people are getting overwrought all over the world, instead of that, they're doing the classic thing of just throwing around all these reckless, irresponsible accusations that somehow these leaders, this is we just read this statement, these leaders, you are directly inciting the killing of Jews. That's it. That statement that we read, which is just simply a repetition of standard foreign policy boilerplate for 58 years, that is an incitement to kill Jews.
Yeah. Free Palestine is today's equivalent of Sieg Heil. Wow. Wow. Here we are, everybody. Here we are. This is just a Orwellian food salad. But George is right. Let's be all honest. There, people in power, people of wealth are intimidated by this. I find it laughable. I find it disgusting, and I'm the first to say it quite openly. I'm not afraid of it. No, because I'm not going to allow people to tell me what words mean.
No.
Okay? I have my own faculties. I have my own eyes. Okay, and this is what this is. I mean, and it's really an interesting exercise to see how people fall in line. They like cockroaches. When the light comes in, they go hide. Okay, that's what they're. These people are like cockroaches. It really irritates me. Have some nobility. Have a little bit of nobility. And I was really impressed. I was watching just by serendipity, watching some of the House of Commons debate when Lammy, is that how you pronounce his name? Lammy?
Lammy,
Wow, what a buffoon that guy
he
is.
is a buffoon.
He is genetically incapable of answering a question. I mean, I think it's part of his constitution. He is unable to answer a question. Okay, he's unable to even understand questions being asked of him. I mean, this is a product, that future scientists will be looking into. Okay, because it's amazing. And one MP, and then it turned into kind of a trend. One MP said, "What do you want me to do? Do you want me to beg you? Do you want me to get on my knees and beg? Because we will do that." I mean, it was extraordinary to me. It was very emotional. What do you want us to do? Beg? Because, will we be able to see how the government determines if this is a genocide or not? I mean, I don't need a legal definition, George. I'm sorry, I just don't need it. Okay, it's intuitive. You understand it. Okay, if you see a genocide, you know what it is. Okay. And so, no, well, the government, I couldn't even follow what he was saying. It was so garbled, okay, and always filled with sympathy and empathy. Very much like the Tony Blinken with the dead eyes,
Right,
that he had. Like a vampire.
right,
Oh, every child is of value, and it's always a tragedy. And it's like, would you cut the BS,
right,
please? What are
right,
you going to do about this?
right,
Basically, nothing.
right, right. And so David Lammy announced that we're putting on the back burner our negotiations with Israel on a free trade agreement. To which, of course, the question then raised itself. Oh, I didn't know that you were negotiating a free trade agreement while all this was going on. So all this time, you know, you know, that month after month after month, you've been negotiating this free trade agreement, and now that it's just simply become a total embarrassment, you said, well, we're going to postpone negotiation, postpone until we can just simply, you know, get some of the embarrassing news out of the way. Um, so this is your free trade agreement, and then you have the EU also examining whether they should be negotiating an association agreement with Israel. So again, they're negotiating an association agreement now.
How many non-European countries have an association agreement with the EU? Do you know? I don't. I
Um,
mean, it kind of strikes me as odd. I mean, Israel isn't in Europe.
right, right. Um, Now, the thing is that let's say you got Britain and the EU. What do they spend most of their time doing? They spend most of their time ranting and raving and fuming and fulminating and raging against Russia. That's their go-to thing. This is what they really like to do. You know, the Kaya Kalas was the EU foreign minister. That's what they do. They spend their time ranting and raving about Russia. Now, when it comes to sort of civilian casualties, there's just simply no comparison. There's no comparison in the war between Russia and Ukraine, which has been mostly targeting legitimate military targets. I mean, obviously there are indeed civilian casualties, as there is in any war. This collateral damage is going to happen, but the scale of it, in comparison with legitimate military targets, it does it there's just it's night and day. And
Well,
yet
I
these
mean,
Kaya Kalas and the rest of them, that's what they just rage against Russia. Now they have to sort of address this, and they don't feel comfortable with it. They just don't get, can we get back to
yeah,
talking about Russia now? I mean,
yeah, but what's happening in Ukraine is a conventional war, a kind of war that Europe hasn't seen since the Second World War, at least at scale. And so you have two countries with air forces, with armies, with surveillance, artillery. I mean, this is a conventional war. Two countries fighting a conventional war. What is happening in Gaza is a slaughter of civilians.
yeah,
There's no comparison at all. And anyone, I mean, that's how the Europeans, they're great at lying to themselves about it. Okay, there's no comparison. The two there's not even a conflict in Gaza because what does Hamas have? What do these different brigades have? They have small arms essentially, and from time to time missiles that are basically fireworks.
mm,
So yeah, the Europeans they like to get on their high horse.
right, right,
Okay,
right,
the thing that the two conflicts have in common is that they're fueling both of them. They're fueling arms transfers to Ukraine, and and Germany is very high on the list in contributing to the Israeli military machine.
yeah.
So that's what Europe's doing. It's aiding and abetting conflicts.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So this, um, you know, this. I mean, one can't even call it a war. I mean, it's in Gaza. I mean, it's just a slaughter. It's now become an embarrassment. Europe made this sort of tentative. Can't we just let in some humanitarian aid? And to which Israel says, no, we can't. And then then they issue this statement, and that's sufficient for the representatives of the Israeli government, the most senior figures, the prime minister, the foreign minister, to declare that these leaders, these ineffectual leaders, Macron, Starmer, Marcani, are responsible for the deaths of these two young diplomats. They're responsible. Let's say responsible by issuing this extremely mild statement in response to Israel's refusal to let in humanitarian aid into Gaza. Um, Aid, I mean, again, one just has to say, aid that's already ready to go. I mean, this is aid that's been organized by the United Nations, by the World Food Program. No, no one's asking Israel to cough up any money for this. And then, and that, but even that is just a little too much.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I came across this. I can't verify it, but of the five lorries that were sent into Israel, two of them had packed with shrouds, burial shrouds. So I don't know if that's true, but I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you. Um, yeah, I mean, this is. I'm sure George, we had the same exact thoughts when I heard about this double murder. I just thought this is how it's going to be
Yeah.
played. Okay. Um, so, when are we going to go? Another 19 months before a mild a letter of observation? We don't want to offend your feelings will come out. It's only going to get worse. The reputational harm of people that are in leadership in the West is only going to get worse. I mark my words. It's only going to get worse. This is something that if you're aware of, you have to decide where you stand on it. It's one of these issues here, okay? We're not talking about increased prices on asparagus, okay? We're talking about something that is existential to our own mortal souls, okay? How do you feel about it? You're aware of it, okay? So you have to take a stand. It's not hard, everyone. It's not hard. It tells us everything about you. And when someone says, I don't follow it, like, it doesn't work anymore. You can't say you don't follow it because it's following all of us.
Yeah. 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 Well, and one has to say that these attacks on the anti-Semitism and incitement, they're quite effective. It has the effect of putting Keir Starmer on the defensive. It has the effect of putting Macron on the defensive. Um, and however much they can try to argue, well, Israel and Jews are two quite different things. In effect, basically, Israel has already won that argument. It wasn't always thus. It absolutely wasn't always thus. I remember a time when you could criticize Israel in quite harsh terms without getting called an anti-Semite. That's gone. And therefore it was this inexorable propaganda machine that came boom, 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 and it's been successful. They destroyed Jeremy Corbyn,
Yeah.
and Corbyn, who throughout his life he has always championed the Palestinian cause. I mean, ever since he was just a young Labour Party activist, he's always been doing that. And then suddenly, you repeat this. Oh, it's just anti-Semitic. The media rehash this and over again, and suddenly, oh, he's an anti-Semite, and he's essentially driven out of the Labour Party, his own party, and into kind of a fringe figure. So it is effective because it's deceitful, but just by dint of repetition, you force people really just to accept it. All right. I mean, I give up. I can't go on fighting against it. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Um, you know, criticizing Israel is anti-Semitic.
Yeah. Yeah. So the aim is that we all must become Zionists. That's what they want. They want everyone to become a Zionist. And if you don't, you're anti-Semite. Just,
Right.
your brain just blows up, okay? But George is right. This is what they put their time and effort into. Look, the head of state and foreign minister, boom, and right out there,
Boom.
right out in
Absolutely.
front, okay?
Absolutely.
Heading the parade,
That's right. That's
okay?
right. Yeah.
And everyone else behind is cowed.
That's right. That's right. And that's Netanyahu, this Gideon Sa'ar. That's We don't even have to get into sort of Ben Gvir and Smotrich and these nutcases, but that's it. They're out there, and therefore the message is, hey, everybody's out to get us. We're the victims. The world is out to get us. The world wants to destroy all the Jews. This absolute lie. Um, but they're very good at putting this out. They know that it'll be just repeated ad nauseum, and that's it. And then what's actually happening is pushed to the background, and therefore you mission accomplished.
That's right. And the genocide continues.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, this was inevitable. This was going to happen. My heart sunk. I just thought, here we go again. And but it's not going to change how people feel. Okay, the media will try to drive you in certain directions, astroturf everybody, but it's not going to work. Okay, it's not going to work. Does it terrify people? Yeah, it does. But it shows who the cowards are. That's one good outcome of all this. We know who the cowards are. All right, everyone. Like I said, it was fully expected. It happened, and George and I talked about it. And we're going to leave it there. This is The Goggle with Peter and George. We're on Local, so please go to thegoggle.locals.com. This is Friday. We're doing a wrap. We reconvene on Sunday. And then with God's help, always we need God's help when it comes to the live stream on Monday at 10 o'clock Eastern.
Exactly. And speaking of God's help, that's, the dog said, yeah, you took the words out of our mouths. With God's help, something's going to take place in the tip jar because nothing else other than God's help seems to be moving that tip jar. So, uh, given that, this.
Apple has told me that God speaks to him. Okay.
That's exactly. And God's saying, hey, you've got to, do something more with that tip jar. So if you have anything, coins, paper, crypto, gold, silver, anything, antique furniture that, that's been, since the 18th century, everything into the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, and the more we can improve on the technology. And then, maybe we're not going to have to keep invoking God in the future. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.